Hello there. Welcome back to the Schools of Excellence podcast. I love today's conversation. I feel like I say that about every single thing, but I really enjoy recording the podcast every single week for you guys. And if you have been a kind of consistent listener on the show and you've been here since the beginning, or if this is the first episode you're finding, thank you for joining us. If you have not had a chance to like and subscribe and leave us a review, I really invite you to do that. When you leave us a review, more people get to discover us, which means we become more discoverable on all of these platforms, which means more leaders can hear the amazing content that you've been enjoying. So if you want to pause the episode right now, if you want to do it at the end of the episode, take a moment to rate the podcast on Apple and leave us a review. Thank you. All right. So every summer, we have school leaders that get blindsided by the same problems that they were blindsided by last summer. Okay. So they have staff chaos, empty seats, shrinking revenue, a budget that doesn't really make sense. And they tell themselves, like, is it just me? Is it just my school? Is it my staff? Is it my parents? Is it the season? Is this the time? Is it the government? Is it this? This is a pattern. Okay. The leaders who move through summer without spiraling are actually not smarter or luckier. Okay. They've actually built something that lasts, the infrastructure that holds them before the season actually hits, before the next season hits. So summer doesn't hit everyone the same, but it hits everyone. Okay. So it doesn't matter if you run a school year program, if you run like 10 months a year, if you run a year-round program, if you run a hybrid model, if you're running a camp, doesn't matter. Summer still shifts your environment. And what I mean by that is enrollment changes, staff availability shifts, and energy shifts. So even in 12-month programs, families travel during the summer. So attendance drops, routines loosen. All of these things start to shift because that's part of what summer invites us to do, this slowdown, right? And so the question isn't like, does summer disrupt your school? It does. It disrupts every school. The question is, what infrastructure is in place when the disruption comes, right? I talk about the disruptive forces in my book, This Can't Be Normal. It's in chapter 4. And it's so important to understand disruption comes for everyone. It's not about, oh my gosh, God chose you to give you the disruption, or the universe, or whatever you want to call it. It's disruption happens for everyone. What infrastructure do you have in place for when disruption comes? And so every program is dealing with the same core pressures: fluctuating enrollment, inconsistent staffing, revenue dips that kind of feels really personal, but is actually quite predictable. So summer creates this very kind of specific pressure point. They're actually pretty predictable. They're not random. There's a predictable pattern. Families pause enrollment. They use vacation weeks, they reduce schedules, and that creates a gap. Because at the same time that that's happening, PTO requests increase. Staff want paid time off during the summer. They want to go do things. Staff want regular time off, even if it's not paid time off, okay? The coverage gets harder. And so now you have fewer children in seats, not enough adjustment in your staffing. And you think that that's a scheduling issue. It's not. It's a labor cost problem. And most leaders do not catch this early enough. So they're spending, but the budget that you approved for in January assumed stability, assumed consistency in staffing and enrollment, assumed predictable attendance. Even if you didn't assume those things and you planned for those fluctuations, summer still breaks things. And what happens is leaders don't adjust their spending intentionally. So they overspend early, they cut late, and then it feels like they're tightening the noose around their neck out of nowhere. The plan that you made just never matched the season that you're actually entering. Reality. Okay? So if you have 10 fewer children in the summer, at an average of $250 per week, that's $2,500 per week. Over 8 weeks, that's $20,000 in lost revenue. Now, if you layer on top of that, then you keep an extra staff member on shift unnecessarily at $15 an hour, at 8 hours a day, that's $600 a week. That's another $4,800 over the summer, the 8-week summer. So you're leaking margins on all ends. And none of that is random. It's all tied to decisions that were never pre-decided in advance. What is the standard? So this is where pressure starts to build, right? That's why my book is called This can't be normal. What to do when success starts to feel like survival? The pressure starts to build. And then every decision becomes a real-time negotiation. Who do I send home today? Do I approve their PTO request? Do I follow up with that family? Do I cut this order? But here's the thing. Those are not yes or no decisions. I'm not asking you if you want to have chicken or fish. I am asking you to make a decision where each one carries financial impact, team dynamics and culture, and operational risk. Yeah, go make that decision in 4 seconds. You can't. So you start holding everything. So now, unintentionally, you're the default scheduler, the decision maker, the overrider, the stabilizer, the shock absorber. This isn't your job. This isn't your job description. But because no one else is going to hold it, you do. You've become the system. So most leaders think, I just need to get better at making decisions. I just need better systems. I need better checklists. I need better scripts. I need better processes. You do not. Because at the core of that, you are still the decision-making engine. So every single time pressure increases, whoosh, everything route backs to you. Every time pressure increases, everything slows down. Every time pressure increases, everything becomes inconsistent and chaotic. Because your school can only function at the speed of your capacity, because you are the centralized shock absorber. I'm going to say that again. You've designed a school that functions at the speed of your capacity. When you're out of capacity, the school doesn't function. And then we wonder why leaders are tired, overwhelmed, burnt out, exhausted, overwhelmed, and can't breathe, and wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and wonder why their hair is falling out and they have insomnia. They're not feeling well, and they get sick all the time. It's shocking to me. I don't know how that happens. It's a mystery. And so most leaders try to manage this by watching numbers more closely, being more vigilant, being more responsive, making faster decisions, but it doesn't solve it. Because your issue is not the speed of decision making. It's the volume of decisions that you have to make that you don't have capacity for. You cannot outwork infrastructure that doesn't exist. You cannot outwork infrastructure that doesn't exist. So what are we going to do? Okay. The schools that figure this out are the schools that build infrastructure. And it starts with standards. Standards are not ideas or intentions. Okay. Standards are the decision was already made before summer started. They already defined in advance the standard of what happens when enrollment drops, how does staffing adjust when ratios shift, what gets reduced when revenue dips, how does PTO get adjusted and handled during high conflict periods, and then who makes that decision, how does the decision get carried out, who owns the consequence if the decision doesn't happen, where does the pressure sit? So when the situation comes up, it's not, what should we do? They execute because you've already decided the standard. Now, when standards are in place, your team knows, okay, this is when we cut hours. This is the PTO decision, and this is when I remove emotion from it. This is how we spend adjustments automatically. We don't have to route through discernment. This is the point of escalation, right? So part of the infrastructure is the decision rights, where when do you actually escalate it to the owner versus when it's like, no, this is in your lane. When that happens, pressure drops immediately because you're not making every decision. Standards are not documents, policies, handbooks, ideas. They are pre-made decisions that remove you from the moment of impact. So when your team needs to decide, they know what to do because the decision has already been made. And so it removes you. Okay. So here are some questions I asked some clients that I was working with one-on-one. If I walked into your school right now and I asked your leadership team, who you pay very nicely, what is your standard for adjusting staffing when enrollment drops by 10%? What is the standard for approving summer PTO when ratios are tight? What is your spending adjustment plan mid-month when revenue dips? These are just some questions. Would your team be able to answer that clearly? Would they all give the same answer? Or would they look to you? That's an infrastructure gap. So this is exactly what we build inside of the standards installation toolkit. Leaders do not need more advice. They need a way to take the 5 to 7 decisions that keep draining and circling around them and create standards in the business so they stop repeating themselves. And inside the toolkit, you're not learning theory. I walk you through the step-by-step process of how to actually write the standard, get it out of your head, how to design who is the owner of this standard, how to discern who's the backup owner of the standard, what is the rhythm to make sure that it happens consistently without any of your reminders, check-ins, just looping back, making sure this happens. So things stop routing back to you. That's when things will start to hold differently. So if you're feeling the weight of summer right now, it's because there are decisions that needed to be made that are still not made because you don't have standards. And until they do, you will keep paying for that in time, in energy, and money every single day and week. Summer doesn't create chaos in your school. It exposes where nothing was built to hold. And so there is a different way to lead. There is a different way to show up, but it requires the slowing down, the pulling the standard out of your head. This is the pattern of behavior I need to see stopped. These are the decisions that keep routing back to me, and they shouldn't, because the team should know how to do it. And so we're going to extract that out of your head. I have a process for it. It's inside the standards install. Then we're going to walk through who owns this. It's not going to be you. Who's in charge of enforcing this standard? What do we do when this person gets uncomfortable because they don't want to enforce the standard, because they want to protect their teachers, or everyone's overwhelmed and like, I can't do it. I can't. Okay, what do we do about that? Because if every time your leaders try to enforce a standard, but they get pushback and then like, well, I couldn't, I told them, that's not a standard. That's a wish. That's not a standard. They have to know how to hold it with resistance. They have to pressure test it against reality. Then we go into rhythm, which is how do we predictably do this all the time, even when we're not in the mood, even when we're short-staffed, even when we're overwhelmed, even when we're in accreditation season. The standard always needs to happen. And then we pressure test it against reality, against the reality of your school. And that we do with one of our coaches. So I really invite you to check out the link in the comments, in the show notes over here, to check out the standards install. This becomes an asset inside of your school. You invest in this asset and then you use it and return to it as you're building out infrastructure in all areas, not just summer enrollment, infrastructure inside of staff culture, infrastructure in financials, infrastructure in parent engagement, infrastructure in how you grow. This is a toolkit that you can return to again and again as you write standards and build infrastructure in your organization. So click the link in the show notes, check it out, and thanks so much for joining me.